Good evening and welcome to All for United, the night after the day before and all that. So we've got a lot to get stuck into tonight. Are we happy with that Arsenal result? Let's get into it. And we've got two good guests, lots of opinions to throw around. Adam, how are we doing?
Yeah, all good. Thanks, Beanie, mate. Always happy to be back.
Lovely. Dazza, nice to see you as always. How are we?
Yeah, feeling really good actually, considering we're off the back of a loss. But I'm staying positive. I think there's lots to be positive about.
You've got to be positive, ain't you? I mean, there was positives to take from it, I think. But we'll start where we have to start. So we take ourselves all the way back to before the game yesterday. The lineups come out. What did you think of the lineup, Adam? Were there any bits that caught your eye that you thought, "Oh, I'm not sure about that one"?
It was a funny one because first of all, what I love about Amaron is he's been very open and honest since he's come in. I really like the way he's been communicating with the fans and with the media. Yeah. And he's absolutely right in what he's saying. He has to chop and change his squad because he's come in the middle of a season. He's probably not had much time to prepare because he's been sporting manager up until the international break. So he's probably not been able to profile these players properly. So I think it is really good that he's giving them all an opportunity to kind of shine. I think he's slowly starting to get a good idea of what that starting lineup's going to be. But I think it's really good that he's giving them all a chance. And I like that he is keeping them fresh because we've got such a busy period over the next few weeks. In terms of shocks, I think the big one for me was given the game that Ahmad had at the weekend. I was surprised he wasn't in the starting lineup, but equally he's very good at kind of telling us what he's going to do because he said after the game of the weekend that, he looked tired when he came off. He'd given his all. So the likelihood was he was going to give him a rest and not do the starting lineup or go for the starting lineup. And same with Xerxes as well, given that, he seems to be one of those strikers that he probably needs a run of games and to get that confidence. I was surprised he wasn't in. But the rest of it, because of suspensions and everything else, I wasn't too surprised with the lineup he brought in, to be honest.
Yeah, that's fair. What about you, Daz? What did you make of the back line with obviously Shaw injured, Martinez banned? What did you make of it?
In my head, I would have liked to have seen Ahmed in that team. I thought he might have been a better decision given the fact that Milicia hadn't played really any football for 2 years. Coming in to start against Arsenal is a big ask for any player, let alone a player that hasn't started for 2 years, which would have obviously freed Delo to go up there. I think maybe in his head, the pre-game preparations was to have Delo on the right and to have Luke Shaw on the left. And then obviously Luke Shaw pulled out, I think, the day before travelling. And instead of just saying, let's just chuck the whole preparation that we've done under the bus, let's just put that left back that actually we have got there and actually is his job to cover for Luke Shaw. So, yeah, let's put him in there. So I defend the decision, but I'd much rather have seen Delo go on the left, given the fact that Luke Shaw wasn't there, and then obviously add Ahmed at the right. Obviously, this is Arsenal we're talking about. I mean, despite their slower start to the Premier League this year, they are title contenders. So, again, having Delo that is potentially vulnerable a little bit in defensively, maybe. Amor maybe thought he might have struggled. I'd like to have seen Xerxes, given the fact that he was on the back of a little bit of form. I think that's a big mistake that Ten Hag made a lot. When we had players, it was finding a bit of form. He would then drop them the following game. I mean, Marcus Rashford treatment being one example. So, again, I defend the decision because you need to be able to bring players on late in the game that add energy. Obviously, we couldn't find that against Arsenal, but it's something we lacked against Ipswich, for example. We had no energy to come on against Ipswich. Maybe in his head he thought of that and thought, actually, Xerxes being in a bit of form, Rashford, Ahmed, these are players that can bring energy to a game.
Yeah, I agree. I think it is all about man management, isn't it? Like Adam said, there's so many games coming thick and fast. I mean, Forest is 2 days away, and I'm not sure how you guys feel, but I think our squad's actually really strong. I actually thought Malacia did really well when he came in. I thought he handled himself quite well for someone that's not played much football. But an injury that keeps coming up, Adam. Luke Shaw. What are we going to do with Luke Shaw? I mean, he really is made of Weetabix, isn't he? Like he just can't keep himself fit for long enough, can he?
No, it's really frustrating, and look, the lad's going to be frustrated himself. I'm sure. I'm sure any professional footballer doesn't want to be sat on the sidelines injured, particularly during a period like United's going through the minute where there's a new manager to impress. But you're absolutely right for the money that he's on, and you've got to look at all the factors, his age as well, the intensity now of the Premier League, how many games there are throughout a season for all the different competitions that we're in. You need someone who you can rely on from a fitness perspective. So do you turn around to him in the summer and say, look, there's not a place for you in the side here? Because the flip side of it is, on his day, he is the best left back in England. That's why he was in the Euros when he hadn't been fit since February, because Southgate knew that. So what do you do with him? Do you take the risk that he is going to be always injured potentially, or do you actually stick with him and hope that he can get over this period and actually you can get a full season out of him? It's a really tough one for Amaron on the board, I think.
Yeah, I mean, where do you stand on that, Daz? I mean, for me, I think we're going to have to go into the market for another left back. I think because you just don't get the security out of knowing that that's your left back, do you, or wherever he's going to play? Because he's a big player, as Adam says. He's on a lot of money. And he walks into that team when he's fit, doesn't he, as well? But it's just getting him fit. Like, where do you stand on that?
I think that's the toughest part in this, because, like Adam mentioned, he's the best left back in England. I mean, I'm convinced he's one of the best left backs in the world when he's fit. I mean, even in recent games where he's come back and we've seen elements of him, he's looked good, he's looked comfortable, he's not looked like he's been on the shelf for 18 months. That's how, I mean, imagine a run of games under him coming to Christmas. It's really coming into his element, and it'd have been a player that could have changed Manchester United's fortunes. Maybe if he was there against Arsenal, maybe would have progressed a little bit further in the final third. You never know, but he's the sort of player that you can always rely on because he's such a good player, but his fitness, his injuries. So I've got to agree with you. I think the main priority, and if we can do it in January, it's so important to do it in January, and that's go to the market for a new left back. Look, there's a couple potentially available, isn't there? There's Davis that's available. There's potentially a buyback clause for I always forget his name, but
Fernandez.
That's the one, Alvaro Fernandez. So there's a couple of bits out there, but I think while he's still at the club, I think he's always going to be the best option when fit. And like we saw with Alex Telles, it's going to be so easy for Luke Shaw to push himself back into that team. I mean, Alex Telles was meant to be his replacement, and he did good when he played. I mean, I liked Alex Telles, but unfortunately, when Luke Shaw's fit, he's the better of the two, so you have to play him. And I think this is an opportunity now where I think Manchester United have got to make two decisions. They've either got to release him and pay, agree some compensation for him, and say, we're going to release you, get you off the wage bill and bring somebody else in. It's going to cost you to do that. But it sort of puts that line in for Manchester United to say, we are now moving on from Luke Shaw. Unfortunately, you can't do that while he's still a player in the team, because, like I said, when he comes fit, you're going to play him. I think we need to, just remove the Luke Shaw element. If that means we're playing with a right back at left back until the summer, we've been doing it anyway. So, but yeah, I think our priority has got to be to go to the market for another left back, because Milicia doesn't look as if he's the man. He looks as if he could be a good backup, but it doesn't look as if the man. But I'd go to the market for a left back. But like I say, it's an opportunity to go for something that specifically suits Amorim's style of play.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, Malacia looks okay, doesn't he? But he looks a little bit erratic to me. And I'm not sure how
steady, Eddie. He's the sort of player that you expect to come in and put in an average performance and just steady the ship when he's covering, for rotation injuries and stuff. And I think that's what a backup's meant to be. Your backups, when you get rid of your starting player in the team, a bit like you've seen with Man City this year, and when Arsenal lost Odegaard, you're always going to see a drop in performance. It's why they're starting players. It's why they're so good. What you then need is just a player that can come in and steady the ship. Arsenal didn't have that for Odegaard. Man City clearly haven't got that for Rodri. But I think Militia being a left back position as well could just be a steady Eddie, someone that will come in when needed and just do an okay job. And they did that against Arsenal. Didn't have a good job, didn't have a bad day. It was just an okay performance, sort of 6 out of 10.
Yeah, like I say, I thought he did okay. I mean, I don't think we're going to get 90 minutes out of him for a long time because of how long he's been out. But I thought he did okay. So let's move on to the game. The first sort of quarter of the game, Adam, how did you see it? We seemed to stifle Arsenal a little bit. What was your take?
Yeah, the first half, I was really, really happy with the performance. I did a post-match video this morning, and we could have gone in 1-0 up. Dalot flashed it across the front of the goal, and it was going to be one of them games. If we were going to get a result, it was going to be one of those moments, kind of like that, where we just nick a goal. But I thought we stopped Arsenal playing their way. Arsenal have been really free scoring the last couple of games. And to go to their place, have 50% possession, quieting down that crowd, and really just stop them having any kind of, impact on our goal. I was really happy going into that half time at 0-0. And I was actually quite hopeful that we'd go on then with the subs that we had, coming on the bench, that we might be able to go and nick a result. But obviously it wasn't meant to be. But yeah, I can't complain with that first half at all.
Yeah, I mean, I think Amarin would have definitely been the happier of the two, wouldn't he, going in at half time, Daz? What was your take on it? I know we threw back a few messages towards each other, and I said maybe we should gamble a little bit more. You was a little bit more reserved. What was your take on that first half?
I think you have to be. I think the one thing Man United have struggled with this season as a whole is defensive stuff. Defensive, we've just been all over, and we've ended up with a negative goal difference for as long as I can remember.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, since the West Ham game, we haven't played anyone of any significance that can really tell us if we've improved defensively, because there's not been anyone good enough to test us at the level the Man City, Arsenal, Chelsea would. So, and Amorim obviously still doesn't know his best starting 11. He's not played a top 6 club yet. So, he's in that awkward position of, what do I do? And it's his first big Arsenal game. So I think to be a bit reserved, and he would have took a 0-0 draw from that game, I think he'd have been really happy, given the fact that it was an away game against Arsenal. And I think as much as Man United fans don't like that, I think he saw that as a successful game, and he thought, let's set up defensively sound. And I think from a defensive point of view, he did everything that he wanted that back line to do. Arsenal was the aggressor. There was the team that was dominating, especially in our half.
Yeah.
Set pieces aside, we took everything that Arsenal had to throw at us. I mean, perfect example, we started a player that hadn't played for 2 years on the left, and then brought in a right back to play in that position. Where was Starboy?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? We've got no left back, and the one we started hadn't played for 2 years. So where was Starboy? We neutralised him really well. And I think at this stage, yes, I would have loved us to have dominated a little bit more in the final third, but I think the biggest worry we've got then is that Arsenal are really good at catching us. And if you look in the last 10, 15, 20 minutes of the game, they was catching us on the counter quite a few times, and they was getting us 4v2 at the back and 4v3, in their favour. So if we'd have done that all game, I think that their experience, their increasing quality, they're further on in the project, I think we could have definitely been at risk of conceded open play goals. And I think Amorim knew that for me. And so I wasn't mad that we wasn't. I think a bit like the Sporting Man City game. I know I've used that as an example a few times, but Sporting sat back for 20 minutes in that game, and they found a break, and it was a successful break, which put them 1-0 up. which gave them a bit of confidence. And then they did it again, straight after, and that gave them 2 goals. At that point, the shape of the game completely changes. I think he was hoping for something similar against Arsenal, to catch them on the break, to use their high line against them. It just didn't happen for us. But I mean, I say this to everyone: 2 weeks against a manager that's had 5 years. You can't. We've seen a style of play, we've seen a system, we've seen a way that he wanted to play. 2-0 to Arsenal is a bad result, but it doesn't paint the full picture. We lost to 2 set pieces against the team that has scored more set pieces than any other team in Europe. So they're obviously the best at set pieces, but also we didn't concede an open play. And I know that sounds like a really nitpicky but it's massive, given the defence that we've got at the minute.
Yeah, I mean, I think Amorim set up like that, didn't he? He set up to make it difficult for Arsenal, for, as Adam says, to stifle them, to stop them playing. I mean, the party just couldn't get the ball out to Saka. No one could feed Saka, and I think that was hurting Arsenal. And I don't think the crowd liked it at all. And I think if you quieten the crowd, I don't know if you guys picked it up, but towards the end of the first half, you could see a few of the Arsenal players. They looked like they were getting a bit pissed off, like because passes weren't going where they intended. I love all that, and it felt like it was really working. So we get to half time 0-0. Those set pieces were an issue, weren't they? Even in the first half, Adam, they were an issue, weren't they? The set pieces, and you could kind of feel that was going to be where Arsenal were going to hurt us. What did you make of the set pieces? How they set it up? And
it's very easy for us to sit here and criticise and say, well, they could have done this, they could have done that. But you've got to look at, they've clearly worked on that heavily. I mean, the stats don't lie, as Daz says, are the best through attacking set piece in Europe. And when you've got Declan Rice, who is putting it, dipping in right on the keeper time after time after time, like it was honestly, you could have put a 50p pence down and he would have hit it every single time, I think.
Yeah.
They're just so difficult to defend against. And the way that they were coming in from the back, players didn't know who were they defending, where were they defending, who were they meant to be picking up. You could see it just caused absolute confusion. So frustrating for us watching, but I couldn't criticise it because that is so difficult to play against, and you've got to take your hat off to Arsenal.
Yeah.
They clearly have a way of doing that, and they've gone ahead and done it, and they've punished us for it.
Yeah, I mean, like you say, it's hard to. It's a weird feeling, isn't it? It's hard to be pissed off by it because you can see that how they set up with them all at back post, and as you say, the precision that they were putting those balls in, it was difficult. I mean, Onana punched a fair few away.
Yeah.
But yeah, they got us again, Daz, with a second one. Should we be learning from that first one? Should we be making it a little bit more difficult? I know there's a lot of pushing, there's a lot of pulling, isn't there? That maybe should get pulled up by the ref. But should we be doing better in those situations?
I'd love to say yes, and I would love to say we need to learn from that situation, especially when you watch both of them back. In my head, they look, and again, I'm not a professional footballer, but in my head, both of them look preventable. And I'd love to sit here and say maybe the ref should have maybe been a little bit more stricter on the fact that on both goals, the goal scorer was literally piggybacking on Hoyland's, I think it was a little bit, and like you say, there's always pushing and handbags in the box. Second one, I think I thought it was offside, but it's hard to sit here and say yes, we should be doing better when you've got to give Arsenal credit. They're the best. They're the best in the world at set pieces right now, and I think they're capable of punishing any team at set pieces, not just Man United. I think all we can hope for is what we've currently seen. We continue to improve. We continue to find small areas of the game and improve in them areas. If one of them areas is set pieces, maybe, somebody put a comment about how every single one was coming on top of Onana and there was placed perfectly. Well, maybe when we play Arsenal again in the Carabao Cup, we learn from that and maybe position Onana a little bit differently. Maybe he runs from the back post in just a little bit to make him a little bit more resistant to that. maybe he comes to the claim a little bit. I don't, it's easy to sit here, but you do have to give Arsenal credit. I think people will banter us for losing 2-0 to set pieces, and I know we've seen all of the memes over the last 24 hours about how it's Stoke 2.0, but end of the day, a set pieces, a way at winning games. If you can win games that way, I wouldn't mind winning 2-0 by 2 set pieces. And
that's
it's
fair.
part of the
That's
game.
fair.
But yeah, I think I'd like to see us continue to improve, but we've got to give Arsenal credit in this. Sometimes a team can do something so well that no matter how good you are, you can't prevent it. I mean, I remember a famous quote by Sir Alex Ferguson, and he said, when you've got Busquets, Xavi, and Iniesta in the middle of the pitch, you can pass the ball around all day long. You could play 10 games and you'd never get the ball from them. Man United was a world-class team at that time, so for our manager to say that another team had 3 midfielders that could just do it better than anyone,
Yeah,
you could do or change was ever going to change the fact that they're in control of that game.
Yeah, I mean, Box makes a point here, Adam. Onana wasn't commanding enough. Typical weak modern goalkeeper. Do you think there's an element of that? I know he does come out a couple of times and punch, but would Schmeichel have come out and cleaned all that out? I don't know.
Respectfully disagree, and it's all if buts and maybes. And the situation, if you look at those set pieces, it was so difficult. I think any keeper, past, present, or future, would struggle and will struggle with Arsenal with the way that they're doing that at the minute. Onana is a very strong, big keeper. If you see him live in the flesh when you're on Old Trafford, he's a beast. And he does come out often and put himself in danger. And he does win a lot in the box. It was just, as we've said, you've just got to take your hat off to Arsenal. It was just really good. And if it was the other way around, we'd all be sitting here now absolutely raving about how amazing it was that United had done that. So, I don't think it's right to criticise at all, given especially the season that Onana's having so far for us. It could be a lot worse had it not been for him and some of the saves he's made. So, no, I don't agree with that.
On the spin side, Adam, they'd be complaining that if he came out dominating the box and the goals would have gone in anyway, they'd have argued that he needed to stand his line and protect his line a bit more.
Exactly.
Like I say, it's all if, buts and maybes. You can, when you look back at a goal, you can always say you should have done that differently. But sometimes these happen,
those deliveries
and they happen to the best teams and the best defences.
Yeah, some deliveries are just undefendable, and that's what was happening last night. Rice was just on fire with dropping those right on top, dipping in just as they were coming into the keeper. They were absolutely perfect. And you're absolutely right. If Onana comes out and does try to win them, tries to use his hands, and they score anyway, he'd be getting criticised. So he can't win whatever he does, really. And you shouldn't criticise the keeper anyway. I don't think with corners so much. It should really be defenders that you should be looking at, because they're the ones that can see that danger coming in and can use their heads to get rid of it. So, I've got no criticisms at all.
Yeah. I mean, we're not going to be the only side that concede corners to concede goals from corners to Arsenal. I remember in the Stoke days, I know people have said that their Arsenal Stokes, Roy Delap, no one could defend that throw-in. How flat and deep that went in, no one could defend that. It's just,
and if you're Arsenal, why wouldn't you do that if you've got it in your locker?
Yeah, why wouldn't you utilise
by using that as in your favour? You'd just be stupid to, just because someone's calling you Stoke 2.0 or call Stoke 2.0. Then if it wins us the Premier League, that's the attitude I'd have.
I agree. I mean, just away from the game, something that's come out in the news the last sort of few hours. They're apparently trialling a rule that if a goalkeeper wastes time, I don't know if you noticed Onana in the first half was taking a bit long, and if a goalkeeper takes longer than 8 seconds with a ball, they give the opposition a corner. Is what they've been trialling in the under-21s in the under-21 league. What would you make of that, Daz, if that was to come in? It would make the game quicker, I suppose.
It's quite a tough one because how would you regulate the 8 seconds? Is it a ref counting 8 seconds in his head, or does he then get told by a VAR? You know, it's
He
a
apparently
digital
puts his
clock.
hand up and gives them 5 and kind of counts it down. And when he's
I
down,
think it's quite odd because sometimes it depends on where the game is. You know, I mean, 8 seconds in my head doesn't sound like a lot, but it probably is in a game, isn't it?
yeah,
So I don't know. I think it would be a bit harsh. I think if the goalkeeper, you know, if it's like the 91st minute and there's 4 minutes added on, and your team looks as if they can get an equaliser or a winner, and the goalkeeper's deliberately taking the piss, then yeah, I
yeah,
could see it being useful. But I think they'd have more problems than solutions for
yeah.
me. Because I think because you know it's a bit like boxing. People complain about refs having fast counts, slow counts. What stops the referee going sort of? You know
Yeah,
what I
5, 4, 3,
mean?
2, 1.
Or
Yeah,
you know what I mean? But
yeah,
every ref's going to count slightly different. I think maybe if it was a digital clock that appears, I don't know if you see basketball. Basketball in the scoreboard, you'll have a little digital. It's basically a shot clock, so you have to shoot within so many
yeah.
seconds of bringing the ball out. And yeah, it's basically so one person can't hug the ball. Maybe if there was something digital, but then how do you regulate that? Is the ref going to keep noticing that? And yeah, I just think there'd be so many inconsistencies with it.
It's like JJ says in the comments. I've noticed this in tennis actually before. So the players don't take the piss. I mean, something that I really don't like United doing. I don't like players wasting time in the first half. Like we were so laboured with the ball when Onana. Like I know what you're trying to do. I know you're trying to slow the game down, and you're kind of trying to play for a point.
Yeah.
Why do that in the first half? I don't. It's very negative for me. What do you make of that, Adam? The rule that I just mentioned, the general sort of time wasting like that. I'm not a fan of it at all.
No, I'm not. Especially on the first half, especially not when you're Manchester United.
No.
I get, okay, it's Arsenal, they're a title contender, we're nowhere near them. So, you know, I get it to that respect. But it's something you do 80 minutes plus, isn't it? You know, if it's a tight game, you don't be doing it in the first half. They were doing it to obviously get the crowd up and get them on the backs, and they were doing it to frustrate the players, but I didn't like it. And as for the rule, I think we've got much bigger problems with officiating in this country at the minute than having to worry about, you know, someone doing that in the background and giving a corner away. I don't think it'd be a good idea if they did bring it in. I think they should be focusing on bigger issues such as VAR and inconsistencies there before worrying about that.
Yeah, I'd probably agree with you, to be honest there, mate. So Arsenal are 2-0 up at this point. Then Lenny Yoro comes on. For me, that's the big positive of last night. Getting Lenny Yoro in a United shirt on the field. And I thought he looked quite good, Daz. I've seen some stats today. The most challenges, the most interceptions or something, and he was only on for like 30 minutes. I thought he looked very good. What did you make of him, Daz, for that little cameo?
I think instantly you can see he's going to be a starter for Manchester United. You can see he's going to be so important to the way we want to play. I mean, there was a lot of talks about how, yeah, there's an exciting prospect, but you'd never know what he's going to be like in the Premier League. Well, he's just introduced himself to the Premier League against title contenders, a team I still even now genuinely think could win the title, especially with Odegaard being back. You know, and he did well. He did well. I think, and I always think it's harder for a player in that position to come on later in the game because you haven't. You know, I always think that it's easier for attacking players to come on, but defending players always better to start a game. I think because but yeah, I think like I say, I had a brief look at some of the stats that have been doing the rounds, and yeah, I mean. My only worry with him would have been that he looked more athletic than imposing, and I thought maybe he'd get bullied a little bit, especially against, you know, like Lukaku's style attackers that are really bullying. But no, it doesn't look as if he is getting pushed around. It looks as if he's holding his own. And yeah, really, I think this is when I said there's loads of positives to take from that game. That was a big one.
Yeah. I mean, I'll put it to you as well, Adam. I mean, Daz mentions about like the big, bulky centre forwards. We don't really have that in our league on the whole, do we? I know we got Haaland, but Haaland would bully anyone really. What did you see from Yoro? Was there anything that you saw there that you thought, this kid could be a real player?
Yeah, he did look really good for his cameo. I liked what I saw. Quite exciting. I can see it in the future being Delic, Martinez, Yoro as your three at the back, and then probably he'll push them Mazraoui out to one of the wing back roles with either Ahmad or Garnacho holding the other. I can kind of see that as what we'll end up doing, because what I've noticed about Amron, he likes to play, with last night being an exception, he likes to play one more attack-minded wing-back and one more defence-minded wing-back who can kind of switch into a four at the back when we need it. So it was really good. And what I liked is his one-on-ones. He was very, very good at his one-on-ones from what we saw. I think there was one with Trossard, like towards the end of the game, where followed him all the way, got the boot in, really clean challenge, and he was also good with his head. And I like that. Says I don't see it being a problem that he's a bit of a small lad, and we've got to remember he's only a teen. He will put on mass as he develops and as they coach him. So exciting, and hopefully start of a good run of games for him, so he can get sort of used to the Premier League and get those minutes under his belt.
Yeah, I mean, as you say, I thought he looked very switched on for someone that's just come on, and his debut for United in essence, wasn't it? I know he played in pre-season, but I think it's really, really promising for him. Let's go into midfield, Daz. So he obviously started Bruno next to Ugarte because Mainu was suspended. I mean, I didn't think he started anyway, given the fact he's just come back from injury and stuff. I'm not sure how I feel about Bruno playing that role. I would probably prefer Bruno a little bit higher, maybe as one of the 10s. I think you lose a little bit from Bruno if you play him there. And I thought we did last night. I mean, the comment said earlier that not much went through Bruno. Like there wasn't really much happening through Bruno. Like we were kind of nullifying him a little bit, playing him in that role. What did you make of that? What did you make of Bruno there?
Obviously, I'd prefer him as a number 10. He's the most productive player in the Premier League. Can stats verify that? That's not United fans bigging players up. The stats there, the stats back up. So 100% you want him as a number 10. But the one thing I thought we looked better in midfield is we didn't look overrun with bodies. I mean, that's something that post West Ham that both Amorim struggled with in the few games that he's had, as well as Ruud van Nistelrooy. It looked as if we was getting outplayed and outrun in midfield. I don't necessarily think that happened against Arsenal, and I think having a player like Bruno that is quite intelligent allowed that to be the case. Unfortunately, like you say, you drop him back to centre midfielder and you lose so much in the final third. The problem is he could have been the difference yesterday between, like you say, didn't look like we could score, could have played another 90 minutes and probably not have scored.
Yeah.
Had Bruno been at number 10, potentially that had a look different. I think it's just rotation, injuries, players available, not available. And I think he sometimes manages have to make difficult decisions. A bit like, a perfect example, quite a lot of people not so long ago hated Eric Ten Hag for putting Luke Shaw at centre-back. Best decision he could have made. Turned out to be mint. So sometimes you make difficult decisions because of injuries and because you have to rotate. And they're not always going to be popular decisions. Sometimes they work, like the Luke Shaw decision, and sometimes they don't work. I wouldn't say Bruno didn't work at centre midfielder. We just lost too much going forward.
I'd agree.
So, I wouldn't say he had I think he had a good game, but Man United could have been better had he been a number 10. Unfortunately, the question would be, who do you play in that? 6, 8, who do you play there? I think especially with you not having your usual suspects for that role.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, Box makes a point here, Adam. Could we potentially see Collier in that role next to Ugarte to, as we say, free up Bruno? Because he's never going to play Casemiro or Eriksen, I don't think, personally, in that role against the better teams. Because there's no legs there, is there? And would Collier do a job there? I mean, he's obviously a young lad. He's got the energy. Could he do a job there?
I think he'd do a job, but once Mainu's back fit, I don't think they're pushing Mainu out of the team, and I think eventually it will settle into Mainu Ugarte kind of central midfield pairing. Just going back to your point about Bruno as well, one thing I did like last night looking at him was the last game that he played where he was in the centre midfield. He got found out coming back quite a lot. He was too far up the pitch and we ended up with loads of gaps. Last night he was a lot more disciplined, which is obviously some Amaron's probably been in his ear, and he was back there making those last-ditch tackles, getting himself in the way of the ball. But I agree, we lost a lot going forward. He was trying from where he was, but the passes were hitting the first man. We're kind of not getting around the man, not what you kind of see when he's a bit further forward. He tends to pull off a lot more of those passes. I'd like to see the younger lads get an opportunity, don't get me wrong, but I don't think it's going to happen soon, because I think you've got, Ugarte, Mount, Fernandez, Ericsson, Casemiro, Mainu. You've got 6 central midfielders there who could all do a job in that central midfield pairing. So it doesn't really make sense for Almiron, unless there was a big injury crisis, to bring the young lads through just at the moment.
Yeah, I'd probably agree. I mean, like Boxer said here, he likes to freshen the team at regular. And I think whilst the squad is getting fitter, I mean, we've only got a couple of injuries now. As you say, the younger lads are they're gonna fall down the pecking order, aren't they? When Mainu comes back, that's probably going to be his spot. But going off that, Daz, that we lost a little bit with Bruno. Where was the threat coming from? I'm perfectly happy with us being very solid defensively, but where's that threat coming from? For me, there has to be more of a threat going forward. Why wasn't that there?
I think it's a mixture. I think you've got to give Arsenal credit where credit's due. I mean, Arsenal, although statistically this season they've not got the best defence in the Premier League, I still think they do have the best defence in the Premier League. Based on the last 2.5 years that we've seen, I think Saliba right now is probably the best centre-back in world football. If not, he's in with a shout, isn't he?
Yeah.
I think it's defensively that team is so disciplined, and their job is to stop us trying to materialise things in the final third. And from an Arsenal perspective, the Arteta will come away and he'll say, "Job done." Job done. You've got to give Arsenal credit there. I mean, sometimes when you play a team that line up so well like Arsenal do, you've just got to say that it was because of how good they was why we couldn't. That's not helpful when you're losing players like Luke Shaw that would, actively help us progress forward. Obviously, you've got Bruno playing a bit deeper due to injuries or suspensions, so you lose that as well. You've got you could argue an out of form Marcus Rashford, a Garnacho that's still learning what a number 10 role is, because he isn't a number 10 and he's learning to, I think right now it's just, I mean, somebody mentioned about freshening this team up. He has no choice because he wants to play quite a high intensity game. Unfortunately, none of these players are fit enough, so every game is a glorified friendly, so to speak. So he can, everything that he would normally do in a pre-season is having to do live in a game, which means he's got to freshen that up a lot. But I mean, let's just say, I mean, there's 3 teams I genuinely believe that would give Manchester United a problem similar to the way we saw against Arsenal. 1 being Arsenal, 2 being Man City, and the 3rd one being Liverpool. I think they're the 3 teams that really play that high line and they play it so aggressively. Let's just say Manchester United lost them 6 games every year, and we beat everybody else. We're still with the league. Still challenged for the league at that. And no, I'd rather be beating these teams, but unfortunately, you said it yourself in the chat, Andy, we're not a team that can challenge for the title right now. So sometimes, as much as people will say how the mighty have fallen, sometimes you've got to look at a game like that and say a draw away at the Emirates is a good result.
Yeah, I mean, I'd have took a draw all day long yesterday.
I think that he just didn't want to over-risk it, especially, and I think he knew that he needed certain players in that team to progress to the final third. But again, you've got to give Arsenal the credit because they're so good at what they do defensively.
I mean, he said in his one of his interviews he did after, he said that we lacked intensity in the final third. I mean, I thought we looked very reluctant to just push that button a little bit, Adam. Like in the first half, we got into a couple of positions for me where Garner would normally be very tunnel vision, but it was all a little bit negative for me. Like I say, I understand wanting to keep Arsenal out, and I understand that we could be putting ourselves in bother if we do press too much. But I just felt like there was a couple of moments, because I mean we missed players, but they had Gabriel out, they had Ben White out, they missed a couple of players in that back line as well. So I don't know if it was maybe at points of that game that there was a chance missed. What did you see that, like just a reluctance to maybe push it just a little?
Yeah, they're almost like a little bit of fear. To kind of take that extra pass, take that chance to take that player on, maybe because they were really aware of the threat that Arsenal pose in the transition, which they do. So yeah, Garnacho especially, you're so used to him running at his man, trying to take them on. Has he been coached this week to kind of say to him, no, I want you to play more like Ahmad does, where he's trying to get balls that we don't know. But I agree with Daz. I think a lot of it, you just got to give Arsenal credit. I just think similar to what we did, they stifled us. Højlund really struggled to get on the ball. He did win a couple, but we weren't getting the flicks on. And I think as well, as we've already said, Fernandes being a bit further back, I think you lost quite a lot there. Mm-hmm. There is a player in Mount, but we're not seeing it yet. But again, he's probably not 100% fit. I would have actually liked to have seen those two roles reversed last night. I think Mount would have done a better job running around, putting tackles in that central midfield and pushing Fernandes a bit further forward. But the three of us are not manager of Manchester United, so what do we know? We just sat on the sidelines, aren't we? But yeah, there just looked a little bit of element of fear for me last night, a bit of a worry that if we lost possession, we could be done on the transition, on the counter-attack. That's what I saw.
Yeah, I'd agree. I mean, we've got City weekend after next, I think it is. Do you see us playing very similar to that? Do you see us kind of just
I think
aiming not to be beat?
Very similar to what he did when he was at Sporting against City. I think he'll have us sitting back, and then he'll try and grow into the game. We've got to be real. We're not the Manchester United of the 1990s. We're not the Manchester United of the 2000s. We are where we are. We're probably the fifth, sixth best team in the league at the minute. So we've got to accept that. We can't just be going on the front foot against these teams, because then results like 6-0 and things like that happen.
Yeah.
And that's the last thing we want as a club at the minute, because I think that just then takes away all the optimism we've got at the minute, all the hard work, and the players' heads will go down. So I think he needs to be clever, and he will. And I do think
that was what I was saying to Andy as well, though. Walking away, losing 2-0 to Arsenal, having been stung by 2 set pieces, it hurts. But that team can recover from that because it's so positive.
Yeah, I didn't go away last night thinking we were dominated by Arsenal.
6-0, I think losing 6-0 to Arsenal because you've tried to attack them does more damage to that squad than a 2-0 defeat. So sometimes, like you say, you have to pick your battles and accept that some you're going to lose by a little bit and some you're going to lose by a big bit. Had that been Ipswich, I think we'd have absolutely gone for the game. Had it been Leicester, any other team, even maybe Brentford, Brighton, teams like that, I think would have gone for that game. There's maybe only 3 or 4 teams in the Premier League where he's like, a bit like, again, going back to the game with Sporting Man City, where he's happy to sit back and then see if his attacking game will materialise from that. And obviously, we see against Man City, it worked. We saw yesterday, it didn't, That's the pros. That shows them 2 games show.
He's very, very intelligent, Almiron. You can tell, and he's going to pick his battles. He knows that this squad is not up to scratch to be competing with all the clubs, the other top 6 at the minute, for a variety of reasons. Not necessarily the players in the squad that we have, but simply because he's come in and he's essentially doing his pre-season now. Completely changing the club. So he's not a daft bloke. He knows the battles he's going to win and he knows the battles he's going to lose. And clearly that's what he did last night. And I came away not overly disappointed or angry, because like you say, aside from the 2 set pieces, which I think many clubs would have conceded last night with the way that they were doing them, we were 50-50 with Arsenal. And I take that to me grave. I wasn't mad with it at all.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I mean, like pre-game, I thought we were going to lose that game, but I do think there's a lot of positives to take from that. We look so much more solid now, and for like Daz says, like you've got Arsenal, Liverpool, and City, and for a side like Arsenal to not really touch us in open play, I think says a lot. It says we've moved on it a lot.
I think the big thing as well, though, Andy, is that people have got to remember this is a Manchester United team, whether we like this or not, that could not stop losing games. We've just gone 8 games and we've lost the first game and 8 games post.
Yeah.
It was only inevitable that Ruben Amorim was going to lose a game, especially with the fixtures we've got coming up. I think we, over the next couple of 4-6 weeks, we'll play everybody again, all the big teams again. It was only inevitable that he was going to lose a game, but this is a team that couldn't stop losing. We've just gone 8 games and lost our first game. That in itself is an improvement.
Yeah, I mean, my point that I was making to you last night was more about it feels like United are kind of stuck in the middle at the moment when we play the better teams, that we are trying to be so solid, and then we're a little bit lost attacking them because we don't want to go too much in case it leaves us open. And that's kind of what I was saying to Adam earlier, like when you get to those good positions in the final third, I think sometimes you just need to push that button just a little bit, just on split moments. I'm not for a second saying let's go like balls out and let's attack them big style. But when you're in those positions, just have a little dig sometimes is all I'm saying. But like I say, I think there's a lot of positives to take. I think
it is a problem that will fix itself though, Beanie. I really do. I think it's maybe like Adam says, he could bring in.
Yeah.
I mean, we don't know what the money's going to be like in January. We don't know whether there's an already plan in place to trigger Alvaro Fernandez's buyback clause, and that was always the plan, even if Ten Hag was still manager. Maybe there's a midfielder in there that we've got in mind that is approachable in. We don't know this. But I think as a couple of players that would have come in anyway, to not give the manager a rebuild, I think this plan within EOS is to bring that back in, to bring a centre midfielder in, to replace Casemiro and Eriksen, to bring in another forward. These was already on the shopping list, so to speak. And I think as he brings them in, I think the only thing that will change is the criteria of them players might slightly change, given the new manager's style. But I think that problem that you've got, Andy, it will fix itself over time. I mean,
I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm by no means sort of negative and down on what we saw last night. I thought it was very positive. I think there's a hell of a lot to build on there, and we build on it with Forest at home on Saturday. What would you do lineup wise different, Adam? Would you be starting someone like Yoro? Would you be? I'd assume Mainoo will probably come back into that middle. Maybe Martinez.
Yeah, I think what we can safely assume is he's going to rotate again. And that makes it very hard to actually predict his lineup. But what he seems to have an A and a B team. That's what I've noticed in the few games that he has kind of managed. So it looks like it's Team B, which is Rashford, Ahmad, Casemiro, Mainoo. Martinez will likely play because he's been obviously suspended. Will Yoro get a start? He may do it where he gives him the first half, like he's been doing with Malacia, just to ease him in. I would like to see that. I think Xerxes comes in and starts over Højlund, similar to what we saw against Everton. And I think it's a good time to play Forest because they had a great start to the season, but they have kind of now returning to where they are as a club at the minute. So it is probably a good time to play them. So I'm hoping for the win, and I should expect we'll get it at home.
Yeah. What about you, Daz? What would you do with the lineup? I mean, Box says here we start Mount again. I wasn't too sure that Garner worked in that number 10 for me yesterday. He looked a little. I'm not sure it fits. I'd be starting Bruno and Mount in those 10s personally.
I think the big one I'd like to see is Delo get a break. He's not playing well. He's been massively overused, play the right, play the left, and no player. I mean, I think he'll be fit for 38 games, 50 games a year, however many play. I think he's just built that way. But it's not fair, the way a player's being passed from pillar to post. He's now got a new manager that wants him to play a slightly different role as well. So it's like the third or fourth different role he's played. So I'd like to see Delo get a break, because maybe a break and hitting the reset button himself might allow him to just find a bit of form again. Because he's not even getting a break internationally as well, because when internationals come around, there's away with Portugal. How he manages that, potentially he could end up playing Lenny Yoro and Maguire again at the back, with them perhaps try Mazraoui on the right, or he could stick with the he could stick with the Yoro and Mazraoui at the back and put Ahmed, because I think Ahmed would be suited for a game like Nottingham Forest.
Yeah.
On the left, play Milicia again, which that gives Delo the much needed break he's got. I want to keep Ugarte in as much as we physically can. Not overuse him, but I think he's going to be the sort of player. Michael Carrick played 38 games a year, never really rotated, never burnt out. Sometimes you can just have midfielders that can play every single game and it never burns out. I think we need at least one player like that in that midfield. One player that know every time when you pick the team sheet, his name's always on that. Not because he's the best, just because he's the most important player in that midfield. Now, I'm not saying he's going to be a Rodri, but I think he could be just as important to our team as Rodri is to that Man City team, just because of the characteristics that he's got. So I'd like to see him stay there until we've got to rotate him. If Mainu's fit enough, obviously I know he's only had a suspension, but if he's fit enough, let's bring Mainu to play with him. I want to see Mason Mount at number 10 as much as I can. His press is so good. Think as well, when you look at that press, especially from like the right hand side, if you're playing someone like Ahmed, we saw how good Ahmed's press is, especially when he did that double press, and obviously Man United got the goal from that. If you've got a player like that and then Mount going in as well, you're going to force an error every single time, and you get goals from them. Obviously, Bruno back at the other side, and I'm not a fan of seeing Garnacho in this team. I never thought I would say this ever, especially not at the beginning of the season, but if this is the way Ruben Amorim wants to play, I would honestly see if we can cash in on him and get some good money for him, because unfortunately he's not a number 10, he's not a centre forward. I don't think he's good enough defensively, and I think even if you played him on that left, you would lose everything that makes him great. So yeah, I don't want Rashford near this team. Rashford didn't have a bad game against Arsenal, but his body language, again, you look at him and it just looks as if he doesn't want to be there, although he did have a bit of a better game. Up top, I'd be inclined to put Xerxes up top just because he's found a bit of form. And I'm not, you know me, I've not liked Xerxes up until that moment. I don't think he fits that team very well. And quite a lot of Man United fans, yourself included, said at some point he'll potentially get unlocked and then you'll see the player that we bought. Maybe Amorim's starting to unlock that player that we thought we bought. And if he can do what he did in the last game, I'm happy for him to be part of that team.
Well, he played more of a 10, didn't he, against Everton, with like Rashford more centrally, and I think that suits Xerxes much better. I think his link-up play is brilliant. But I agree with you about Garnacho. I think we said on a show a few weeks back, there will be casualties, I think, with the Amorim system, because it's obviously a squad that's built for a totally different system, isn't it? So there will be players that fall by the wayside.
Him or Rashford has to go. I don't think you could keep them both. Yeah. I think Garnacho, potentially you could yield a higher price tag for him, but I think as much as we might not like it, I think what Marcus Rashford represents to the academy is more valuable to the Manchester United brand than Garnacho, if that makes sense.
Yeah, well, I think Garnacho is more sellable.
Yeah, Rashford can cover a couple of different roles as well, which I think would be quite useful to the manager, whereas Garnacho is pretty much a left winger. Yeah,
I mean, I kind of agree with what Box is saying here. I've seen like a little bit of a change in how Garner's been as well. It feels like he's it feels like he's been tracking back a little bit more, trying to put in that energy and that effort that Amorim wants. I mean, Rashford was good against Everton as well, to be fair. What are we saying prediction wise, Adam? Is this a win? Is it? I know Forest got a win at Anfield, didn't they? So it can't be took lightly.
Yeah, I think it's a win. I don't think we're going to walk all over them. They're in the position they're in because they've been playing well this season. I think it'll be a 2-0. I could see something like that. But I do think we'll beat them. As I say, they just seem to be on the decline at the minute, probably back down to the level that the club are at the minute, which is kind of mid-table. So, yeah, I can see it being a 2-0 or a 3-1, as Box says, something like that.
Yeah. What about you, Daz? Are you going for your famous 5-0, 6-0, or are you keeping it short this time?
No, I was going to say 3-1 myself, but then actually there's no reason why a clean sheet isn't an achievable target, given the way the last 8 games have gone, given how defensively good we was against Arsenal. You then ask your question, would Newcastle try and punish us the same way? No, because they've just not got the quality to do that. But it's important to be mindful that until they lost 3-0 to Man City yesterday, they looked like a team that were pushing for European football. Not saying they was going to get that, but they're in a position where you look at that Nottingham Forest team, strangely enough, and you say they could challenge for European football. Whereas, Adam said, we were mid-table. We're not. I think we're going to be in this awkward position for the rest of the year where we'll beat teams like Nottingham Forest, and you'll look at the numbers and you'll say top 4's achievable, and then we'll play a team like Liverpool or Arsenal or Man City, and the reality will drop us back down again, and then we'll win a couple more games, and you'll think, we can push for top 4. I think European football would have to be the goal, where that would be within that bracket. I think that would be a successful season, but yeah, I think I'm going to go 3-0 win because I think a clean sheet is an achievable target.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Box. I think it's going to be 3-1. I think he's got him playing quite well now. Nuno at Forest got him hard to. I mean, I know they lost by 3 goals yesterday, but the other games they've been hard to break down. He's got Alanga and Hudson-Odoi, good threats going forward. Big Chris Wood, so they will pose a threat. But yeah, we should be beating. I mean, I think Box said earlier in the live that beating Forest, beating Victoria Pills, and beating Wolves is probably more important than the Arsenal game yesterday. Really, we need to take the 3 points in games that we need to be winning. Really, because as you say, we're on a different level to the 3 big boys at the minute. But I think that kind of covers the games. There's a few little bits in the news that have come out the last sort of week that I want to kind of cover. One of them is we'll go to you first, Daz. Read this one. One of them is Dalot to Real Madrid for 50 million. Are you selling Dalot to Real Madrid for 50 million? Daz?
Oh, my head tells me no, because he's a really, really good player. My brain tells me, my heart tells me yes, because I really want to think that Amid could be that man on the right. I think looking at the way he wants to play, Amid can defensively improve, which I genuinely believe he could. And then down games, when they're them games where you play your Liverpools, your Arsenals, and you need someone that is solid defensively, you could then put Mazraoui on the right, just to be a little bit more defensive. That's the idea of having different players that can play slightly different roles to cover certain games. So if Real Madrid are coming in at £50 million, I would honestly take it, because it's not. I mean, I saw something from another fan channel when we're talking about Manchester United. Is when you look at the best right backs in the world, would you say Dalot is on par with them? My answer to that is no, he's not. So why have we got him? Why have we settled for having players that are not best in position? Why are we not trying to improve on that? Players like Dalot's great because you get 38 games a year out of him. He's never injured, and that's great. But he isn't at the level And I'm gonna compare him. I think defensively he's better than Trent, but I do
Don't
think
do it.
Trent would be more useful to this Manchester United team, given the way we want to play in a five, than Dello would be. But so if they're coming in at 50 million, I'd let him go.
No, we can't have Trent anywhere near. I'd have Dalot all day over Trent. Would you sell Dalot for 50 million, Adam?
It's a tough one because I don't personally think it's going to happen anyway. I think
No.
it's just paper nonsense. But if someone came in for 50 million for him, I would actually say no. I think he's very important to the squad. I think he's a very versatile player. And I think there's still room for improvement with him. So, yeah, I'd stick and keep him personally.
I think, as you say, I think it's the media making a story because they want Trent, don't they? Really, and I think they're just trying to fish a little bit there. So that's that one. Another one, maybe a little bit controversial. So against Everton, I think it was, we were due to wear a rainbow-coloured training top to support LGBT communities and stuff like that, like they do with the rainbow laces and etc. But Mazraoui decided he didn't want a part of that, with him being he's a devout Muslim and goes against his religion and stuff. Where do you stand on that, Adam? Like the players almost, I wouldn't say they're forced, but they seem to have very little. They seem to have very little choice whether they want to go down these routes. I know there's a lad from Ipswich who's an Egyptian. Again, wasn't overly keen on doing it because of his religion. You got Mark Gahey at Palace that wrote something, I think it was, on his armband. It feels a little bit, where's like the free speech, where's the freedom of mind, and where do you stand on those sort of things, Adam?
It's a very difficult one. It's obviously a really sensitive topic that we obviously have to be careful about when we do speak about it because, the club, if nothing else, is inclusive. You can see that around the ground. There's various banners. But I do think players should be allowed to make their own decisions. Personally, I'm not religious myself, but for someone who is a devout Catholic, a devout Muslim, it can really morally sort of upset them because they're completely going against what they believe in. Mm-hmm. So I don't think players or anyone should be forced to do anything. It's a fantastic campaign, really worthwhile doing, much like the Black Lives Matter and everything else that's kind of gone before, with obviously the kneeling before games. But no one should be forced to do it. It should be, each player should be sort of given the option and given the choice. And you'd still find that 90% of the players would wear the armbands or the jackets or whatever it would be to support them. But for those that it would go against a religion, it just doesn't strike me as being very fair, to be honest, to force them to do something. And then as well, you get the backlash if they don't do it. Again, I don't think that's very fair either.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, they're told not to wear political signs and stuff like that. Like you say, it's a very good cause, and it has done some great things, like countrywide, worldwide. I just think it needs to be left out of football, those sort of things, personally. Where do you stand on stuff like that, Daz?
I think I agree with Adam. I think that it needs to be a player's choice, because the problem is you're promoting diversity and inclusion for religion, sex, you name it, or black, white, you name it. We're promoting, we want people to be happy and respectful with everything. By asking a Muslim to wear an LGBTQ armband, you're just pissing on the fact that it's against his religion to be gay. I'm not saying that that's right, that's wrong, but what I'm saying is that is his religion. The same with certain cultures in the world. I mean, Indians, if you're gay in India, it's punishable by death. I don't agree with that, but that is their culture. So it would be unfair to ask an Indian footballer, I know we've not got one, but to wear that armband to promote something that's punishable by death in his country. And I think, like you say, if you said to certain players, if it goes against your religious beliefs, there's a black and white captain's armband that we used to wear in the 90s, feel free to wear it. Or maybe a couple of choices of armbands, from the rainbow armband to just the plain simple black and white one, to the let's kick racism out armband, different varieties, and say, I'm sure you can support the diversity and inclusion cause somewhere, you know, because unfortunately, because of political beliefs and different cultures around the world, you're not going to tick every box, and it's unfair on certain players. And I think players have the right, you know, like Masraoui saying, I'm not wearing the armband, I'm not supporting it because it goes against my religion. If you then punish him for that, you're then saying that Muslims don't matter.
Yeah.
Their beliefs don't matter, which completely contradicts everything you're trying to do. So, yeah, I think it should be. I think it's maybe the club should say we're going to push pro anti-racism and pro LGBTQ, but we do respect, for example, Mo Salah, that every so often might wear a captain's armband. We do respect that you're Muslim. We've got this black and white armband when you need to wear it that you can put on. You know, when the sub happens, we then hand you a black and white armband, and then the player goes off in LGBTQ. And there's got to be respect for these cultures that don't believe in that. Again, I don't believe that cultures should be like that. That maybe that's a cultural problem, but the reality is, it is the reality of religions, it is the reality of cultures, and you have to respect all of them.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, as Adam says, I know the club does a lot for these sort of things like Black Lives Matter and the diversity, because you can see it everywhere at the ground when you go, and you just get the backlash.
The grounds have got enough banners, borders, players have got rainbow laces to say that Manchester United, for example, as a whole support anti-racism. We support LGBTQ community. I'm sure if it was a right player for the right, person, we wouldn't care whether he was gay, you know, whatever. We don't care. If he's a good football player and he fits the project, I don't care which way you swing. But I think the one thing we shouldn't be doing is forcing players to wear stuff that goes against their religions and signing players just because they tick a box. Yeah.
I mean, like you say, like he's a Muslim and that's his belief and he's allowed to believe that, and others are allowed to, you know, believe what you want, just as long as it's not harmful to anyone, then, you know, live and let live, I say. But that's the show, guys. I think I am going to end it, I think, as we'd have all seen today. Kath Phillips passed away, obviously, at 85. I'd like to extend all for United's condolences to her family. She's been a massive part of the United family since the late 60s, I think it is. All documentaries you see about Carrington, Fergie, she was a massive figure at the club. I mean, she was always a smiling face in Carrington, with guests, with players coming in. So, yes, everyone at All for United, I just want to throw out our condolences to her family, and, rest in peace, Kath, I think it's fair to say. So we're going to end it on that one, I think. Hopefully we can get 3 points on the weekend for Kath. As she gave so much to the club, we can get 3 points for her. Adam, where can we find you?
You can find me mostly hanging around on TikTok. Hadfield Reacts is my handle. Would love to see some more followers, get involved. I try and do videos every day. I usually tag these two in them as well. So we have good chats between us. But thanks for having me on again, mate.
Yeah, no worries. And if anyone is watching, go over and give Adam a follow. It's always good content, always good opinions. Dazza, if we want to see your ramblings, where can we find you?
I'm on TikTok pretty much every single day. That's Stay Controversial, or I'm on here chatting with you guys.
You are indeed, and we will be back on the weekend, hopefully, after a demolition of Nottingham Forest, hopefully. But that's it. Thanks for everyone that's watched. Take care of yourselves. The weather is terrible here. If it is where you are, take care of yourselves. Yeah, shocking. I'm amazed that my internet's lasted, to be honest, to do this. So, fair play there. But yeah, take care of yourselves, everyone. And we will catch you on the weekend. Come on, United with Forest. 3 points, bring it home. Take care of yourselves.